and thank you for all of you who elected to attend the webinar today. I know many of you may be experienced SLIM users, and some of you are new to SLIM, so regardless, I hope that you'll find something beneficial to walk away with today, particularly since if you're primarily a SLIM estimate user, we're going to talk about some features that you may not be familiar with. One thing that's new in version 9.0 of the SLIM suite is expanded training. We've extended the amount of time that we spend on each tool to cover core concepts more in depth. And so this tools diagram is new to the training, just as a reminder that SLIM suite really does help you manage the entire life cycle. So if you look at the blue squares, we start a project in the very beginning with an estimate using SLIM Estimate, and that produces a project plan, which we can then use SLIM Control, our in-flight project tracking and forecasting tool, to manage and look at plan versus actual values. And then when the project is completed and we have our project actuals, then it makes it a lot easier to go ahead and get them into SLIM Data Manager, our historical project repository. And so actually with the SLIM philosophy, you'll know that the historical database is actually where we begin, because that's the basis of our estimate and what gives us a defensible estimate. The other tools, of course, we'll be talking about today in relation to analysis in 9.0 particularly is SLIM Metrics, and then of course Master Plan is our portfolio management tool. So just a reminder how all the tools work together. And so in addition to the overall diagram, we created some specific diagrams to focus in on how, again, one or two tools go together to support a specific step in the life cycle, the estimation process, the tracking and forecasting process. And so what you're looking at is the SLIM Suite metrics analysis. And again, you're just going to load your historical completed projects and create a master database. And what you will focus on is the core metrics. Hopefully you maybe contain some custom metrics and the demographics. And then you're going to use SLIM Metrics think of it as a window into your master database and it's going to contain your charts, reports and queries, data set definitions, and things that you need to perform benchmarking and other process improvement type analysis. We also use SLIM Metrics to create our trend lines. So we use that for the QSN database, of course, and you can do that in creating your own custom trend lines. And you can use SLIM Metrics and the data set definitions to create smaller subsets of your master database if that's desirable. And our trend groups, of course, are used within SLIM Estimate. So just again, another reminder of how the tools work together, because our focus today is 9.0 improvements, and those are primarily centered around SLIM Data Manager and SLIM Metrics. So the major themes for then 9.0, which is our focus for today, is Data Manager and SLIM Data Manager and SLIM Metrics. And we wanted to simplify and clarify data entry so that user interface has been vastly improved. Wanted to make it easier to collect, display, and analyze data, of course. Actually, managing and maintaining the database, some features have been improved. And improving the quality and the accuracy of sizing data, we'll spend a good amount of time talking about how we've provided more insight into data that may have already been there, and then how you can actually add some more detail to your sizing information. And lastly, we have some better management of queries, data set definitions in SLIM Metrics. Both of those can be difficult to see what you've got, and we've put a lot of changes there as well. Towards the end, the other products and tools have had some minor upgrades, and so I'll get to that at towards the end of the presentation. So again, just to highlight the main features in SLIM Data Manager, we've got new keyword management. We have changed we've allowed multiple custom view layouts, which is, ways that you can arrange the various metrics and look at them and send them out as reports. The sizing detail is more visible, which I mentioned, in a database validation routine. In Slim Metrics, we've expanded the ability to see what kind of data set definitions we have and where they are and how they might be used within our analysis and the query conditions that support those. Now we can put median values as opposed to just, let's say, a statistical average. We can put the median value on charts. And we've expanded the capability of using multi-select metrics, like keyword would be an example of a multi-select metric. I can have one project that has 5 keywords that apply to it. And so now we can see those better and use them in Slim Metrics. And then the Slim API and the other applications, as I've mentioned, have had some improvements. So let's dive right in and start looking at the differences. Most of what you'll see is on the slides, and I'll go and show a couple of things live, but it's nice to be able to contrast the way it was with the way it is the best way to highlight the features. And Kate Armel deserves credit for putting most of this presentation together. In fact, within QSM, version 9.0 is affectionately known as Kate's release because she's been asking for these features to improve her work with the QSM database. So this first feature is keywords then. Version 8.2, the keywords are typed in by hand in earlier versions as well, of course. So if you can see my cursor here, if I had keywords I wanted to associate with a particular project, I would just type them in and separate them by a comma. So the data entry was time-consuming, error-prone. You couldn't see all the keywords very well in the database. And you couldn't display the keywords in a project list. And with our new online collaborative tool, Slim Web Services, the keywords got lost during exchange. So in 9.0, we've streamlined and simplified the way that keywords are configured and entered. So each keyword is separate now, and you can create a master list of keywords which will apply and be available for selection across your entire database, and so it promotes data consistency and accuracy for sure. You can define and manage and reorder your list, and so whatever order your list of keywords in, that's the way they'll appear on the project list. And of course, with the exchange with the Slim Web Services, all of your keywords are preserved and go back and forth. So keywords are a really powerful tool. Sometimes you might have had to create a custom metric maybe for something that you wanted to, a characteristic you wanted to label about a project particularly. And now the keywords make it easier to quickly tag projects for characteristics you might want to separate them out by at a later date in your analysis. So this is just an example of defining and reordering the keyword master list. I can type in, reorder the list, delete any. It just makes everything a lot easier. So now the display on keywords, you can see in this is an example of the project list view within Slim Data Manager. If I were to reorder the keywords, then that would be able to display for me here. And as you can see, because keywords are a multi-select variable, now we have multi-select variables available in the list, and so I'm able to see for this project which ones apply, and I can sort on that as well. So I've mentioned multi-select metrics on the right, on the left-hand side. We have previous versions. Multi-select variables were, of course, available, and I don't know if you've ever noticed, if you look at all the kinds of different metrics that are available in Slim Data Manager, you can have this N here means that it's a numeric value, a T represents the text value, and then we would have single select, and multi-select variables are represented by these single and double bars. So system features would be an example then of a multi-select variable. I may have, this one may be a database and also a distributed system, so I can select more than one. And entering these and setting them up, and then once you're entering project data, selecting them for that record, we've just reduced the number of clicks that it takes and simplified those a little bit. And by separating them out more, then that's really is what enables us to use them more effectively in SLIM metrics, which I'll get to later on. So again, just an example of how I might define the metric in the first place. I can reorder them here like I can the keywords, and it just makes things a lot simpler to locate. Custom metrics are, again, if you're not using them, I hope you'll consider how you might use them more in the future. Custom metrics are exactly what they sound like. SLIM Data Manager has predefined metrics that promote the historical collection process that supports the estimation process and the rest of the life cycle. But SLIM Data Manager ships with some predefined custom metrics, and of course you can create your own. It's nice to be able to use maybe some of the examples that are shipped in order to, as a guide to create your own. But because there are a number of custom metrics and they're arranged in folders, you might have this very long list of metrics, and trying to find the one you're looking for wasn't exactly easy. So now we've got just really some simple management and organization tools such that you can expand and contract the folders to make it a lot easier to see what's here in the first place. And then you can deactivate unused metrics. So for example, several of the pre-shipped custom metrics you may not be interested in. And so if you don't have any data in them, they're not, you can check them as not active and deactivate them, and your list is drastically shortened and easier for you to manage. You can also click and drag and reorder the folders and the metrics. Previously, in previous versions, any custom metrics that you would create would be at the bottom of the list, and now you can put them at the top of the list where they're much easier for you to find and work with. So let me go ahead, and before we talk with sizing, let me just show you a couple of things in Data Manager then. So again, just to refresh your memory, or maybe you haven't spent much time in Data Manager, here's an example of what the project list looks like. And if I double click on a record, this is the basic information tab, and you can see here the keywords are listed here with a new edit menu that I would simply go in and reselect if I wanted to add more keywords. It's a lot easier here. So I'm selecting keywords from my master keyword list. And under the custom metrics, here's the list of all the custom metrics that I have. The system features is an example then of the multi-select variable to show you what that looks like. I can, again, just easily pick the ones that would apply to my project. On the sizing tab, actually on the basic information tab and the sizing tab, the sizing data for your project was spread out across both. And so it was difficult to get a high-level view into exactly what kind of data you had there and what it meant. So on the basic information tab, where we typically enter the high-level sizing information, you could see a spot to input the new and modified and unmodified counts. And if you had specified a particular function unit like function points or story points, that label would be there. But it was hard to see other useful information. For example, the gearing factor. If I'm using a function unit, what's the gearing factor associated with that? Do my counts represent effective or the total size? And what is the basic size unit? It's, again, this information was in there but hard to see. And so we've redesigned the interface to present more, give you more insight into what you have and what you might want to collect. And just as a reminder, the primary sizing record then is, what is that? Well, that's what I've been calling the function unit, and that's typically in a language that the user understands. How are we sizing? How would we like to size the application originally, perhaps for an estimate? It could be, for example, 250 stories for an Agile project. I might be sizing in function points. And sometimes we also size in lines of code early on. So we need the gearing factor then to create and map all of these to what our normalizing size record, and that is usually implementation units or source lines of code, something like that. And this is our way of comparing projects one to another. You can also have secondary sizing records. Perhaps you also would like to know the number of requirements that are implemented by either the stories or the function points. And so this data was available in Data Manager, but it just wasn't all in one place. And so again, just a reminder of the normalizing sizing data and why do we need that? Well, that's what allows us to create the trend lines. That's what allows us to compare different projects measured in different units and have them be compared on an equal basis. So a very important feature. So the basic size unit is something that we want to make known. So again, on the left-hand side of the screen is a picture of what you would currently see or would have seen in version 8.2 and previous versions of Data Manager. This is the defaults, the global default screen, where we set up the function unit. And in the defaults in Data Manager, we're setting up, you can have different function units for different projects. This is just setting up the one that would be available for data entry of new records, and of course you can always change it. But you would set the primary function unit here, and you had to drill down to set the basic work unit, and you may not even know what it's set to. And the gearing factor if the gearing factor of if the function unit were the same unit as the basic work unit, then the gearing factor should be 1, and it was free-form data entry, and you could actually either on purpose or accidentally change it to something else. And so we've tightened down the definition of these terms and how they're related to one another in version 9.0. So instead of the basic work unit, we now call the normalizing size unit the base size unit. And actually what you're able to do on the global defaults is to just specify the preferred acronym for the base size unit. The base size unit is listed in the primary size unit or the function unit selection list. And you can, again, you'll have a list of all the units that you may be already familiar with are still there, but whatever unit you select as the base size unit, two things happen. An asterisk is placed by the list, so you clearly understand that that is the unit that is the base size unit, and the gearing factor will always remain 1. It becomes deactivated, and you can't change the gearing factor if your function unit and the base size unit are the same. So again, for data integrity and for simplification, we had a lot of customers who didn't see that what some of these units were and were entering them multiple times. Easy to do. So again, just looking at the basic information tab, now in version 9.0, we present a lot more information up front. So you still have their sizing tab, the sizing section of the basic information tab. You can enter your counts of new, modified, and unmodified, and then you can change more easily at the record level, change what the function unit may be, and also you can see readily the gearing factor associated with that function unit. The sizing tab is again has always been there, and we've been able to enter multiple different units, if you will, to measure the entire system. It wasn't really clear necessarily which one was primary and secondary, and we had to drill down to another screen to get the detail about each one. So a little bit of tunneling there. And again, just the way it's presented could be improved, so that's what we did. So in 9.0, again, everything is clearly labeled. You can see on the left-hand side here we have the primary sizing block, and this makes it clear if we have any unmodified code or not. So does the effective size and the total size, are they the same? If we have a function unit other than the base size unit, it will show here. If you are using the base size unit as your primary size unit, then you would just have the one column that shows the both. Then I'm able to add a secondary size unit, and the example I gave earlier might be, let's say, business requirements, and I think I have a screen on that just a moment. I can just right-click in the second sizing area and add as many additional units as I like, and I can tell whether these are going to map to the effective size or to the total size, and then the gearing factor is calculated. So here's an example of that here. This system is 1,000 function points, and the base size unit then with the gearing factor is 20,000. And so if I add also, I wanted to know that, well, these 1,000 function points originated from a requirements document with 200 requirements in it, and that maps to the effective size. And I've got the SLIM Data Manager clearly shows the calculated gearing factor that maps the requirements back to the same base size unit. Another great feature, I think this may be one of my favorites, is the ability to have multiple view layouts in Data Manager. If you're familiar again with Slim Estimate or any of the other tools, and you think about the navigation panel on the left-hand side, you're able to have sections or folders of different views, and a view is a way of presenting different charts and reports. In Data Manager, we just had the one project list. You could customize it, but you were limited to 15 variables. So now we've supplied the ability to have multiple views with a label, which you can easily pull down and select. Okay, so we can have, you can create, save, edit, and reload multiple project list views. You can have up to 15 metrics on each view, and you can have up to 14 pre-configured view layouts. The other nice thing is the ability to import and those view layouts from other Data Manager files, just like you can do, and you may not even be aware that you can do that in the other tools, but you can. And that keeps you from having to recreate them across different databases. You can just borrow them and bring them in as you like. Of course, we've always had the ability to export your summary reports to Microsoft Office, and that remains. And the database summary report is composed of whatever you happen to have on your current project list. So here's an example again of just a window that you might use to customize your view layouts. Here's your list. You can take one of the ones that's pre-shipped with several for you, so you might want to just select one and edit it. Then when you click the edit button, you'll be presented with the view layout definition. You can also right-click on your grid and pull this up anytime. And so this is where you're able to select up to 15 metrics over on the right-hand side from the master list of all the metrics available, core metrics and including your custom metrics. And this is an example of the ability, again, to import your view layout from another .smp file, which is the file extension for Data Manager. And we have improved the data validation also in Data Manager, database validation. Previously, if it's under the maintenance menu, if you were to run that, it would highlight in blue some suspicious entries, if you will. And if you hovered over the blue highlight, then it would pop up with a helpful hint as to what you might need to go check. There's a much more robust validation report now that will give you by project name and ID maybe some things that you need to go check and validate about your data. Let me just show you quickly the view layout. Here's an example of the pull-down list. I'm showing the cost here, for example. Maybe I want to do a quick cost analysis of all the projects in the database. And what this is nice for is that you can search by any of the columns. So having the ability to have multiple view layouts and go look at different metrics that make sense to be presented together and then sort and rearrange of those is a lot more helpful. And just to show you that sizing tab. So here you can see an example. Again, this one is in function points. Here's the gearing factor. I can pick what other function point, what other function unit I might have for this project. Okay. And then on the sizing tab, I can see the count for the primary sizing and the secondary sizing. And I could just simply add another sizing unit if I wanted to. That is a presentation, or ends the presentation, of all the functionality for SLIM Data Manager. So I'm going to move right into SLIM Metrics. Having better keywords and the way that they're specified in SLIM Data Manager then helps promote better querying of those keywords in our metrics tool. So previously, with the keywords only being a string, it was very difficult to use those in a query. If I were looking for all the projects that had Agile as a keyword, then I would get occurrences of just that keyword, but every other project or keyword list string that also contained that information. So in 9.0, with the keyword stored singly, then you can zero in on exactly what you're looking for. And there was also no easy way to display the results on charts and reports in side-by-side. So here's an example, a bar chart in 8.2, wanting to display keywords, and I would end up with the entire string. So the number of occurrences here is misleading and not helpful. In 9.0, the bar chart and reports list now supply the keywords and true count of those occurrences across your projects. So much more meaningful information. And I think it promotes the use of keywords as an easy way to tag information and quickly zero in on what you're looking for, or create subsets of your database that are meaningful to do some in-depth analysis. So in previous versions, moving on to the multi-select metrics, again in querying, the custom metrics in Data Manager, you couldn't use the multi-select in SLIM Metrics. It just wasn't available. They weren't available for queries. And so because of the restructuring, then of course we can use those in queries and make the multi-select like keywords and other tags something that you might consider using now, because you can get some value out of it. When you were wanting to, this is a screen for creating a bar chart or looking at the properties of a bar and histogram chart, which would be the same for any others, then the multi-select variables simply weren't in the list, so they weren't available for selection, and now they are. The managing of data set definitions and query definitions. So data sets, again, are just simply ways that we might highlight a character or two of a project in order to group them together. For example, what you may be familiar with is all systems. All systems we have the recent label of projects being assessed. That is a grouping of all of the projects that are in the linked database. And then I can create other queries by date. Let's segregate something, but let's say all the projects before 1990. These are good examples of what a data set might be. And then the queries are what we use to define those data sets. And in previous versions of SLIM Metrics, we had to drill down. So we were able to have up to 26 data definitions active at one time. And then in order to see, well, what's in this data set, we had to drill down and look at the individual queries one at a time. And also with the 8.2 and previous versions, the query conditions that are presented when you're defining your queries were the same regardless of the metric type, whether it was text, numeric, a date metric, etc. So now in version 9.0, the query conditions and the query definition screen is streamlined and context sensitive, such that if I'm working on defining a query that revolves around a multi-select metric, then the help that I get, the relationships I'm going to get, are going to be specifically related to that. The master list of the dataset definitions and queries are together then. This is how it's rearranged in SLIM 9.0. It's very much easier for editing and reviewing all the dataset definitions in your current database. So this is the dataset tab, and for the similar information we saw on the previous screen, I have a list of all 13 datasets that are here. I believe you would see even the ones that are active and inactive. The number of, it tells me how many projects match this data set. So how many, this high street financial data set has 4 projects. And where is it being used in SLIM metrics? If a data set definition, if you see it's being used in 0 charts and reports, then you might want to reassess the usability of that data set to begin with. And you can also see the default reference set that goes along with that data set. What would it be compared to? So if it's in use or not, and you can more easily edit existing data set definitions and create new ones all from the one screen here without having to drill down. And this is an example of the query condition screen. So again, I have all of the queries here. I'm looking for an application type for business, only an application type for telecom. I'm sorting and looking for projects by organization. How many data sets are using this query? And then how many records, again, are matching this particular query. Same ability to edit existing queries and copy and clone them, make a few changes and give it a new name, and then creating new ones, of course. And again, if you find out something is not being used, then you can quickly and easily clean it up. So more visibility in what you've already created helps you avoid creating duplicate data sets and queries, because it is really easy to do in the previous versions. So you can select the data set definition, again, review the queries, clone them, what have you. There was previously the 26 active data set limit, and so that's gone. You can have more than that now. And, before, if you were to remove a data set, you would not even know if you were breaking some charts and reports. And so now, again, by seeing where those data set definitions are being used, you can keep the integrity of those views and what's on them. I mentioned in the early on that one of the features was the ability to add and select, rather, the median on bar charts and reports. And many software metrics are skewed. They are skewed distributions where there are many more small values than large ones. And in this case, the median is often a better measure of central tendency. And so we have, again, an example using our Agile and other development paradigms as an example. We're looking at mean time to defect, which is our project quality measure. And the average mean time to defect for this particular group of projects is 11 days. But the median is only 3.5 days. So you might have a couple of projects in there that are skewing the average, and it would be difficult to know that. So you would, maybe want to look at one or both of them to get some more insight. So another helpful additional statistical measure. So here's an example of what that would look like. You can select, the median is just a radio button selection for the metric that you've chosen, and you can also select to add the first and third quartile values and the min-max values as well in the Statistics tab. Let me see if there's a couple of things to show you in Slim Metrics. No, I don't have Slim Metrics open. So in Slim Estimate then, so that concludes the features for Slim Metrics. In Slim Estimate, a few things on the new, when you create a new project from a template, there's been a new solution added, which is called No Solution. That's primarily for the integration with our new integration with PPM tools, so that could happen dynamically. But you may also want to use it yourself. It simply means that there won't be any information on the charts, and you can start with a clean slate. We now show the average staff on the solution panel. In addition to peak staff, you have the ability to make the arrow color on the risk panel configurable. We've removed the rational focal point integration, and we've restored some missing effort by skill by phase charts, and I'll show you an example of that in a few minutes. So again, just to show you what this looks like when you may not have ever read through and paid a lot of attention to all the different solution options in Slim Estimate. I hope that you will. And so down at the bottom, we've added this new one called No Solution. When you use that, you can, again, your charts and reports will just have no data. So that may be a clue that that you selected that option. This one is an example of what the new solution panel in Slim Estimate looks like. So you can see here that in addition to both the build phase, phase 3, and for the life cycle, the peak staff, we've got the average staff as well. And average staff is also available as a design to input selection for your solution options on the solution assumption screen. I mentioned that we were going to restore the effort by skill, by phase in charts and reports. This feature, this release 9.0 is the release defining features are data manager and metrics analysis. Well, in Slim 8.2, it was the staffing allocation ability to break out effort by skill by month. And so one of the charts that we've took away but put back is the ability to show effort by skill at the various life cycle phases and for the entire life cycle as well. And I can show you what that looks like. So if you haven't used the skill allocation yet, here's an example of what it looks like. So we've got the project duration across the x-axis, and this is staffing. I could also look at effort and cost for the same information by skill. So skills are the roles of the team, and the estimates now will tell you in FTEs or effort and cost the requirements as the life cycle progresses. We've got different people rolling on and rolling off projects. Slim gives you a resource demand plan for your projects. And so now you can look at that this way by month, or you could look at effort and skill summaries across the life cycle and at the phase level. So this is effort. This is for the entire project, for the entire life cycle. I could right-click on this chart and change my effort by skill chart to one of the other phases only, and my numbers would change. I could, often what we do with the effort and skill allocation data, whether it's by month or something like this, often we want to use this data somewhere else, like a PPM integration. Then we can toggle it to a report and then export those to Excel. And again, just here's an example, a takeaway when you get the slides at the end of today's presentation, just a reminder of what you might be able to do. So these are, each of the phases are represented. If I wanted to, I could export those and then combine them in a report in Excel. In Slim Control, there are very few changes. We've updated the Agile template, and the changes are to the burn down metrics created specifically for that kind of methodology. And we added some plan and actual data, again, as an example in the template to give you an idea of how you might use some of the charts and graphs. We're considering now, or the algorithm considers now, missed actual milestone dates. So that's now reflected in the number of data points used in a forecast, and just made some of the solution panels easier to read. Changes to SLIM's application program interface, or the API, is now you can retrieve a list of trends in a SLIM workbook. So for those of you who are creating and using custom trends, this might be very helpful for you. If you've got some way that you're using the API, you can use the API to, once you retrieve a list of the trends, say you were looking for a specific custom metric, then you could then set that trend for the estimate that you're getting ready to calculate via the API. There's also, again, a new API call to retrieve the calculated PI, which would include the PI calculator adjustments from a SLIM estimate workbook. Again, I believe this is supporting our PPM integration, but there may be uses for it within your organization separate from that. You can now access the SLIM Estimate API as a COM component from C#, and there's better data validation for data imported via the API for SLIM Data Manager. Ties with that new database validation feature that I highlighted a few moments ago. Across multiple applications, so again, something like export to MPX, which is Microsoft project, we had two file formats available there, so we just removed the MPX. The MPP format is universally accepted, I guess, for all those other versions, and so we just took the other one away, so something you might notice. Architectural changes that we've been working on, we did a lot of work under the covers, if you will. We've migrated SLIM to Unicode, and we made some data access layer changes. So nothing you will see necessarily, but beneficial nonetheless. And if you're familiar with the ability to use templates and sample projects for each of the tools that are shipped and installed as a default with your application, we've updated a lot of those. Some of them were out of date. We updated the projects so they were more relevant to 2015. We've also added data, of course, then to highlight the new features. And so I hope you will, again, take advantage of the samples and templates and kind of walk through them. That's what they're there for, is to see, okay, well, how might I configure projects like mine, and take a look and see what's in there, and hopefully it'll give you some ideas. A newer version available message is now available, or comes up for you on the splash screen when a new, let's say you're using 9.0 and then 9.1 is released, then when you launch your application, you'll get a message that says, let you know that the new release is available. Sometimes getting that information into the right hands was a challenge, and so the users will know when something else is available. I mentioned the base size unit, so the reference to anywhere you're familiar with working with the basic unit of work, just know that it's now called the base size unit, still the same thing, but that label is clarified in the user interface across all the applications. Excuse me. We blank out the gearing factor when changing the function unit. So when your function unit is equal to the base size unit, then the gearing factor will be 1 and be disabled from editing. And then in the documentation, the guided tours for all the products have been revised and expanded. And again, something that you may not be familiar with, I hope you'll take advantage of, is the guided tours. There, you'll find them in the front portion of the PDF formats of your user guides, again, installed in the documentation folder under your QSM tools folder. And in that section of the user's guide, it does exactly what it sounds like. It will take you through an example and highlight the core features for that tool. It doesn't take very long, and you actually work with the tool as you follow the guide. And if you're new to SLIM, and particularly maybe 9.0 and Data Manager and SLIMmetrics, for sure, I would encourage you to take advantage of that. If you all are wondering what's in a release other than maybe watching a webinar like this one, you can always go to the QSM website, and under our support menu here, there is an installation and upgrades page on the download section, and we always supply links to the latest release notes there. In fact, you can go back 1 or 2 versions and see what was released previously, and the most recent tool will have release notes there. So if you're in question, of course, always contact your account representative, but you can look on our website. We have a lot of resources about what's in a feature there as well. The recap of each of the features, I basically just put this here for your reference, knowing that you will be able to download the slides at the end of today's presentation if you wanted to. So this concludes the presentation that I have. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. Elizabeth said I would supply my contact information. I don't have a slide for that, but it's within, I think most of you know how to reach me, but it's you can send an email to support@qsm.com or to laura.zuber@qsm.com. And my telephone number is 703-749-3690. Thank you for your attention. Please don't hesitate to contact us if you want help. And you may be familiar with the SLIM coaching sessions. We do coaching sessions on any of the tools. So if you'd like to schedule one for Data Manager or Metrics, we'd be happy to do that for you.
Thanks, Laura. I think we can open it up to questions now. I know we have one already in regards to SLIM Data Manager. And it was, are there any restrictions on what a keyword is, i.e. name length, characters restriction, etc.?
I don't believe there is. I think it's just it's a text field. Well, it's a multi-select field of text, and I don't believe there is.
Another question we had is, what happens to my database when I upgrade to a new version of SLIM Suite?
Well, that's a good question, and it's actually when you upgrade to SLIM Suite, all of your workbooks for the various tools, for example, a SLIM Estimate workbook and SLIM Control, they would all be the same. But the SLIM applications recognize when workbooks for any tools were created in an earlier version when you were to open them. So you'll be told that this is the case, and you have the opportunity to upgrade the workbook or to decline. Once you do upgrade a workbook and save it, the workbooks are not backward compatible. So it is a good idea to make a copy of the current version, perhaps before upgrading. Another thing you may or may not be aware of is major releases of SLIM, for example, going from 8.2 to 9.0, are actually separate applications. So you do have an opportunity to take time, a little bit of time to transition from one to the other. So you could save a copy in the previous version, work with it in the new version, and then when you're happy or ready to move on, then just keep the most recent copy. you should review your data set definitions and queries to make sure that they are intact, and most of them will be.
What are some examples for using keywords?
Well, again, I think any tag that you would want to identify a project's characteristics with. We use the example of development methodology. Now, there is a predefined custom metric called development paradigm, which is the same thing as a development methodology. Perhaps on the basic information tab, if you are maybe looking at that or can recall, we have organization and division are high-level ways of segregating a large amount of projects, but perhaps below the division level you might want to identify a particular group or a team. So really any label that you would want to use to tackle methodology, a business area, and you can use that information then in a query. So think of any way that you would want to query against a project. In some instances, it may be easier to use a keyword, I think, as I mentioned, than a custom metric. Just depends on how you're using it. But the nice thing about keywords is that they are presented on the basic information tab.
So I think we just have one more question, and just to remind everyone, we will have a replay available of this webinar, and I'll send out an email with a link to that and a place where you can download the slides next week. And once again, feel free to follow up with us at either info@qsm.com or support@qsm.com for any additional questions you think of after this presentation. So the last question we have is, can you explain what a data set definition is?
Sure, that's a good question. There are three underlying objects make up a SLIM metrics data set definition system. And so the terminology is the data set is a subset of records from a larger database. So to build a data set, we simply apply the queries, as we've talked about, to the database. The data set definition is then composed of one or more query conditions that I might combine logical operators then to select a data set. So for example, I might want all of the application all the projects where their business is the application type, and I want to combine with that the size measure of 100,000 lines of code or less. So those two queries then go together to form a data set definition. And then the projects that meet those data set definitions will be the ones included in that subset. The query condition then, just like I gave the example, is fairly obvious then. Application type equals business, or the size is less than or equal to a specific value.
Okay, thank you, Laura. And this is a great presentation today. Everybody stay tuned for future webinars from QSM.